December 2015. The run-up to Christmas had brought its usual sense of winding down. Schools were getting ready to close for the holidays. Workplaces were easing into the quieter weeks ahead. Many people were looking forward to a brief pause before the new year. For teachers in the UK like Katie Locke, the break was especially welcome. She worked long hours in a demanding, high-pressure environment, so the Christmas period offered a rare chance to rest, reset, and enjoy time away from the class. 23-year-old Katie lived with her parents and was the youngest of 3 daughters. She taught history and politics at Cardinal Pole Catholic School in Hackney, East London, and was described as beautiful and vibrant. Being a teacher meant most of her free time was taken up in lesson planning, marking, and meetings. But whenever she had a small bit of time to herself, she loved all things sports. Even as a child, she was helpful and outgoing. Her father said one day she came home from nursery and we asked about playtime. She didn't go out to play because she was too busy helping the others put their shoes on. As a teen, she was sociable and very easygoing and grew into what was described as a self-confident, fearless, energetic, reliable, and kind young woman. She loved being part of a team, participated in the Brownies and the Girl Guides, and also developed a strong interest in water sports, even becoming a kayak instructor. She had studied history and politics at Southampton University and also volunteered at the 2012 London Olympics. She had even spent time working with underprivileged children in the United States. She was someone who always achieved what she put her mind to. Like many people across the country, Katie had been using online dating as a way to meet new people. She had joined the platform Plenty of Fish, and in early December she connected with a man named Carl Langdell. Their initial conversations appeared to be positive. They seemed to get along well, leading Katie to agree to meet him in person. On the face of it, he seemed like a very accomplished young man with much going for him. His LinkedIn showed him as someone who had graduated law school and founded his own law firm, even having a blog named Ordinary Decent Human, which talked about humanitarian issues. Katie knew that you couldn't really know someone until you met them in person, so she kept her friends in the loop as her plans took shape. She shared a photo of Carl and told them what the plans were. Carl and Katie met and had some drinks at the traffic bar in Shoreditch, East London. She sent her friend a message to say the date was going really well. But Carl was soon drinking to excess and became extremely drunk. With the terrible state he was now in, she, likely out of concern for him, decided to take him back to his hotel. She paid £65 for the taxi and an £80 cleanup fee after he had been violently sick. They arrived at the Theobalds Park Hotel in Hertfordshire and checked in at 3:30 in the morning on what was now December the 24th. The receptionist stated that as they walked down the corridor, Katie supported Carl because he was unsteady on his feet and staggering. On Christmas Eve morning, there was the familiar sense of anticipation in the air. Families, shops, and hotels were preparing for a busy period, and staff at the hotel were moving through their usual routines amid the seasonal rush. Amid this normal hustle and bustle, there was an unexpected silence from Katie. Katie had been due to house sit for a friend, but she didn't turn up. Something very unlike her. They got in touch with her mom and dad, but they didn't know she'd been out on a date. What made the silence even more terrifying was when her friends tried calling her mobile phone repeatedly. None of the calls were being answered until finally someone picked up. But it wasn't Katie on the other end. A man was heard making long drawn-out breaths and whispering the name Katie. Because she had sent her friends a photo of Carl, they were able to find him on social media. They sent him a message on Facebook to ask him where she was. He was confused and said that she had got in a taxi and left, and he had no idea where she had gone, but her friends were not giving up. They were able to find his address, the house he lived in with his parents, and Katie's dad drove out to find him. When he arrived, Carl's mother said that he had taken the dog out for a walk and she would ring him to find out what was going on. Surely there was a reasonable explanation. But when he answered, Carl said, "I am a monster. I put her in the ground." Katie's father called the police and Carl was arrested at Lee Valley Park. He confessed to an officer where he had dumped Katie's body. The police wasted no time and moved quickly to the hotel grounds after receiving the information he provided. Officers searched the area, and it was there in undergrowth near a skip on the hotel property that they discovered the body of Katie Locke. Her body had various injuries which were believed to have happened before her death. These blows had come from either the floor or an object. The pathologist described the attack on Katie as forceful and prolonged, accompanied by serious sexual violence. Carl was taken back to the police station to be interviewed, and he had alcohol, diazepam, cocaine, and antidepressants in his system. It had become the responsibility of the officers to now piece together exactly what had happened. And although he had already told them where her body was, much of the circumstances remained unclear. Investigators now had to work methodically through his account, gather evidence, and establish a clear timeline to understand the truth of what had taken place. The following day, Christmas Day, investigators were hoping to clarify the details of Carl's earlier admission. However, when the interview started, he refused to answer any more questions. Instead, he sat in silence throughout, providing no explanation or additional information, leaving the officers to continue putting it together without his cooperation. Carl had a long history of interactions with the police and mental health services. He had been diagnosed with emotionally unstable personality disorder with narcissistic and antisocial traits. In 2009, he had received a caution for assaulting his girlfriend, and 4 years later, he was classified as a risk to himself and made unsubstantiated claims that someone was trying to hurt him. In February 2015, Carl was living in Bristol with his girlfriend's family, while his family was in Hertfordshire. The following month, on the 20th of March, Avon and Somerset Constabulary received a report from the intensive support team stating that he had made a threatening call to a community psychiatric nurse. During the call, he said he wanted to cut the throat of his girlfriend's sister, remove her clothing, view her naked, and abuse her body. The nurse considered the threat to be credible. After learning that his comments had been passed on to the police, he made another call to the intensive support team where he threatened to slit the nurse's throat. He then contacted the police from outside his girlfriend's home and threatened to kill someone. He was arrested and detained under the Mental Health Act. A mental health assessment was carried out and a detailed letter was sent out to Carl's GP. In that letter, it was noted that Carl had told the assessing doctor he experienced sexual gratification from the thoughts of killing people, had been having such thoughts since the age of 16, and felt they were becoming increasingly intense. The doctor assessed him as presenting a high risk to others, but the letter was not shared with any of the Hertfordshire public bodies. The doctor stated that Carl posed a danger to women and had full capacity to understand his own statements. But this statement was only seen by one consultant at the Hertfordshire Partnership University NHS Foundation Trust. Carl was ultimately not detained following a Mental Health Act assessment. Instead, he was arrested by police and remanded into custody at Bristol Prison. On April the 15th at Bristol Crown Court, he pleaded guilty to making the threats to kill his girlfriend's sister, and sentencing was postponed. He was granted bail with conditions that included wearing an electronic tag and residing at his parents' home. Avon and Somerset Constabulary did not notify Hertfordshire Constabulary that he had been bailed to their area. NHS staff in Hertfordshire did not report to the police that Carl had apparently been starting fires at the hospital or that there was an incident of alleged sexual contact with a female patient lacking capacity. Despite documented plans indicating that these matters would be referred, the safeguarding investigation into his alleged act of sexual contact with the vulnerable woman focused on the position of her and overlooked any inquiry into Carl's actions or the ongoing risk he may have posed to women. On the 10th of August, it was recommended he be detained under the Mental Health Act and was later moved to an all-male ward to ensure the safety of vulnerable female patients. Just over a month later, on the 17th of September, he made a fourth threat to kill someone. He shouted at a staff nurse, "When I leave or I am discharged, I will kill someone. Document that. I will kill someone when I leave. You must document that." Hospital staff did report the threat to Hertfordshire police, but it was not formally recorded as a crime. On the 20th of September, he was discharged from the psychiatric hospital. He was sentenced at Bristol Crown Court on the 2nd of December after pleading guilty to 2 counts of making threats to kill. He received a 9-month prison sentence suspended for 2 years along with a 12-month mental health treatment requirement and rehabilitation activity requirement of up to 15 days. Not long after his sentencing, he visited his GP attempting to persuade her to prescribe 2 months' worth of medication. She declined and issued only a 1-month supply due to his history. Just 12 days later, he met Katie, who had no idea about any of his history or that he was serving a suspended sentence for threatening to kill 2 women. At the time, Carl was known to 2 police forces, 2 NHS mental health trusts, and the National Probation Service, and they had information relevant to his risks to women. But what had exactly happened in that hotel room? Carl had strangled Katie to death, but his depravity did not stop there. After murdering her, he sexually abused her body. When police searched his phone, they were able to recover photographs that had been deleted. They were of Katie's body. Carl accepted that he did take the pictures in question. Carl called the reception to request a late checkout and placed a Do Not Disturb sign on the door. He wrapped Katie's body in a quilt from the room, placed it in the laundry cart, and wheeled it out before leaving her near a skip outside. Another guest at the hotel had noticed that a coat hanger had been wedged into the fire escape door on that floor, something that looked really odd and out of place. He then went back into his room and went to sleep. After getting up and having his breakfast, he checked out and left. When the staff later entered the room, they found that all of the bedding and towels were gone and that the window lock had been broken. It emerged that afterwards Carl had actually called a woman he had met on Tinder, someone he had been seeing for a couple of months. He'd even taken her to the same hotel before. It was reported that he told her he had killed someone. He did not give any explanation as to why he had done it. He told her he would be in prison for a long time. In spite of the evidence and injuries to Katie's body, Carl said that he hadn't attacked her, but his protestations made no difference. On Christmas Day, 26-year-old Carl Langdell was charged with the murder of Katie Locke. He was remanded in custody. In a statement released after news of her murder broke, Katie's family said that they were distraught, in shock, and totally devastated. There was not a bad bone in Katie's body. Katie worked hard and loved her job as a teacher. We now feel like our future has been stolen from us. Carl's violent behavior did not stop. When he was remanded at HMP Bedford in May, he brutally beat a prison officer in a vicious and sustained attack. The officer had refused to unlock a cell so Carl could smoke in there. And then he charged at me. He smacked me in the face, smashing my eye socket, and then threw me against the wall. He started strangling me and nearly broke my neck. Carl was convicted of causing actual bodily harm. It would be 8 years before the prison officer received compensation for the attack. It was now time to enter his plea, and appearing via a video link from Bedford Prison, 26-year-old Carl Langdell pleaded guilty to the murder of Katie Locke. But that would not be the end of the proceedings. The prosecutor said that they needed to establish what the circumstances of Katie's death were, as there were no comment in interviews. And when the truth came out in court, many would be left sickened and stunned. The prosecution said that Carl had told his mother he had strangled her and gone too far. He had too much to drink and he didn't want to ruin their Christmas. He claimed it was a sex game. He reportedly told the police she didn't even put up a fight. I expected her to hit out or something. Carl's defense team said that Carl had claimed Katie had said she was into BDSM and put his arm around her neck. Dr. Philip Joseph, the forensic psychiatrist who examined Carl, said he was emotionally unstable and that he had psychopathic disorders. He was narcissistic, emotionally unstable, and also cold and callous. He got sexual gratification from controlling women. It is likely the killing was sexually motivated. June 2016, Carl Langdell was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 26 years. Judge Andrew Bright QC told him the abuse of her body after death increased the depravity of the murder. He said, "I am firmly of the view that you pose a very great danger to women and young girls with whom you come into contact in the future." And I note that you have described yourself to others as a monster and a psychopath because of what you did to Katie Locke. Once you have served the minimum term I have set, it will be for others to decide when, if ever, it will be safe for you to be released. They will need to be guided by psychiatric opinion. Carl sobbed as Katie's mother, Jennifer, said that nothing could have prepared her for seeing him, adding that she would miss her daughter every single day. Katie's father looked at Carl in the dock and said on the internet, "You said you were an ordinary, decent person. You are ordinary, but you are not a decent person. Katie's loss is huge for me." In a letter, Carl said that no apology I give and no sentence I receive, not even my death, could make up for what I have mindlessly taken. Although sentencing had now concluded and Carl's fate was legally settled, significant questions remained about how he had been managed in the months and years before Katie's death. Concerns were raised about his earlier interactions with mental health services, the police, and probation, and how someone with a history of serious threats towards women was still able to come into contact with Katie. There were also issues around why certain agencies were unaware of key information about his behavior. The inquest into her death requested by her parents would become the forum in which these failings were examined and accountability sought. The assistant coroner for Hertfordshire, Alison McCormack, conducted the inquest. It was found that several opportunities to share information between public agencies about Carl had been missed. It was noted that there had been minimal information sharing and no coordinated approach to his management. It was revealed that none of the organizations managing him knew the full story and that none of them knew what each other knew about him. The coroner concluded that although Hertfordshire Partnership University NHS Foundation Trust had identified the need to protect female patients and staff from him, this concern was not extended to safeguarding women in the wider community after his release. The coroner also found that no Hertfordshire agency considered referring him to Hertfordshire Constabulary's potentially dangerous person procedure, which could have been used to manage his risk in the community. It emerged that when he murdered Katie, he was actually in touch with up to 20 women. There were missed opportunities to implement further measures within the criminal justice process. Specifically, a complete and accurate picture of Carl and the risk he posed to women was not presented to the Crown Court during his sentencing for making threats to kill. Summing up the hearing, the assistant coroner said that mistakes were made. But as I said at the beginning of my findings of fact, Mr. Langdell is the only person responsible for Katie's death. She also praised Katie's family for their courage and strength. As Mr. Locke has told me, Katie would have said everyone makes mistakes. Reflect, acknowledge, and move on. I think that's very good advice. An independent review was commissioned by NHS England, and it found that there had been systemic missed opportunities, including a lack of information relating to Carl's prior care. But it did conclude that there was no way for staff from any agency to determine whether he was one of the 97% of people who only make threats or one of the 3% that carry it through. We conclude, therefore, that the tragic death of Miss Locke could not have been predicted with a degree of certainty that would have made it possible to prevent. The 11th of February, 2021, 5 minutes past midnight. Carl Langdell was found with a self-inflicted wound to his neck in his locked single-occupancy cell. He went into cardiac arrest and was rushed to Penderfield's Hospital, but was pronounced dead at 13 minutes to 2 in the morning. Katie Locke was a young woman with a vibrant future, dedicated to her students, her friends, and the life she was building. Those who knew her spoke of her warmth, her intelligence, her generosity, qualities that both shaped her work as a teacher and her relationships beyond the classroom. The tragedy of her death lies not only in the manner in which it occurred, but in the loss of the years she should have had ahead of her, the career she was thriving in, the experiences she was yet to enjoy, and the people whose lives she would have continued to touch. Her story is a reminder about the importance of safeguarding, accountability, and responsibilities held by the systems designed to protect the public. But above all, it is a reminder that the person at the center of it, a daughter, a friend, a teacher, was someone whose life mattered deeply and whose absence is felt profoundly by those who loved her.